What's going on, y'all? I want to give you my review of the IGS NE573, and I'm speaking to you right now through a Roswell Mini K87 mic going into the IGS NE573. Before we get into this, I want to give a shout out to Front End Audio for making this review possible. So the NE573, it's another Neve 1073 clone. This one is from IGS, and I feel like they're late to the party with this. I'm curious why now. There's many other 1073 clones on the market, and at this point, I feel like if you want a Neve 1073 clone, it's really just your preference of what company you want to go with. A lot of highly respected companies are making 1073 clones. So we'll take a look at the NE573 and see what makes it different. Let's take a look at the front panel. So looking at the front panel of the NE573, we've got that ever so familiar big red knob. Below that, you've got your impedance, 1.2, 300 ohms. You've got phase, high Z, which does mute the back of the mic input, and 48 volts phantom power. So when I first picked this up and held it in my hand, it did remind me of other Neve clones I've used in its weight. It's got a very solid feel to it, which it should because this does have Carnhill transformers in it. And what I really like is the output is detinted. Very fine detents there. And just overall, this unit feels really good in the hand. This is my first time using an IGS product, and really compared to other Neve 1073 clones, even some rack mount 1073 clones, I won't say any names, but they feel cheap to me with just plastic cheap feeling knobs. This feels really solid, and I also really like just the design of it for the most part. Very clean. The mic gain, some 1073 clones have that where you go from the 55 dB to off to 65 dB, and you've got your mic level, line level. A little confusing. I like how this is just straightforward. You just go from 5 dB up to 65 dB of gain. Very easy to use. The impedance, the 1.2 300, looking at this for a minute when I was first using it, I thought that the top button, this first button that's pushed in for 1.2, and I guess while we're doing this, we can go ahead and switch to the 300 impedance. So taking that out now changes it to the 300 impedance, and a little late into this, but just want to note that I'm not speaking into the Mini K87 anymore. I'm speaking into my Rode Procaster, but I am still speaking through the NE573. And we're back at 1.2 impedance. But I thought that the top button was 1.2 and the bottom was 300. Just by looking at this at first, I didn't realize that the second button, push button, is actually the phase. But just like all other 1073 clones, this has all of the familiar features. There's nothing I see here additional or adding to it that the other clones don't do. So you are getting a straight up 1073 clone here. But as far as design, I do really appreciate just this clean layout here of the design. And I also like the front panel, having a mic on the front panel. That's really underrated, I will say. But let's get into some examples of how this sounds. So I'm no longer speaking into the NE573. And this is a vocal example. This is an artist named Kiara Soulchild, and we recorded this with the Roswell Delphos 2 microphone and the NE573. I'm going to play a clip of this, and I've got no other processing on this, just a little bit of reverb.
Say my and them games. You said you loved me, and then you changed. Thoughts of having all your babies, but then you started acting shady. Boy, you can go stop playing games, games. Oh, oh.
Okay, so you can hear we're getting a ton of color there. The Delphos 2 is a transparent microphone, so we're getting a ton of color from this pre. And does it sound like a Neve 1073? Can't speak on that. I've never used an original 1073, but this does have similarities in other 1073 clones that I used. Now, for this vocal, I feel that it's lacking a little clarity and a little dark on the top end, but that's also similar to other 1073 clones I've used. Where 1073 clones I've used that I don't like comes in with the low mids, and the low mids on the NE573 is fine to me. A little too much for me for this vocal, which is why I just took out the Pro EQ here and did some what I felt this vocal needed was just a little bit of EQ, cutting some low mids and adding some air, and I'll play that in just a second. But other 1073 clones, the low mids get really muddy, in my opinion. Some of them. This is not too muddy for me. I did pull out some low mids for what I like in a vocal. Also, the other 1073s that I've used don't give me the clarity in the low mids as well. This as well, I don't have the clarity that I would like in the low mids. So I'm not a huge fan of this on this vocal, but I do like the overall color and character that I'm getting for it. I just don't think that it fits her vocal, in my opinion. But I'm going to play this with this EQ in here, and I'll bring it in and out so you can hear the difference.
Say my, and them games. You said you loved me, and then you changed. Thoughts of having all your babies, but then you started acting shady. Boy, you can go stop playing games, games. Oh, oh.
Okay, so there's an example of just without sound like EQ'd. We're going to move on to some more examples. So here are some examples of the NE573 mic'd with a Sennheiser MD421, and I've got a bass guitar mic'd, a bass guitar DI, and electric guitar. We're going to start with the bass guitar mic'd. And this is the DI. And this is the electric guitar. So overall, I really like the NE573 on electric guitars. It's just got a big fat sound, and normally when I'm recording electric guitars, I like a preamp that's going to give me character and color, and you definitely get a lot of that with the NE573. Not mad at the DI. Also sounds good on bass guitar as well. So yeah, my favorite from what I've recorded with this was definitely guitars. So I want to also point out that the NE573 fits nicely in a 500 series rack. Just using 500 series gear over the years, I've just realized that some pieces can have a tough fit. And if you're familiar with using a lot of 500 series pieces, then you likely know what I mean. But the NE573 fit well in my lunchbox, the purple tin rack, and I think there's one more 500 series rack I put it in. But that's one thing that I want to point out is that it did fit nicely and played well with all of them. So why would you go with this versus the other Neve clones that are on the market? So for me, it comes back to the build quality and the faceplate design. It has one of the cleanest faceplate designs for a 1073, unlike others that I used. I really like the simple 5 dB steps that you have. It's easy to read as well. It also has a premium feel. It feels a lot nicer, doesn't feel cheap like some of the other clones that I've used. And it has a very generous 3-year warranty that you get with it from IGS. The low mids aren't a muddy mess like some of the clones I've used, even though I still feel that it lacks some of the clarity that I would like to hear for vocal recording. Still get a very colored, still has a lot of character, especially when you use it on instruments, guitars, bass, as you heard, and even on vocals, you get a lot of that color and character that's just unique to the Neve sound. The price on this is $825, which falls somewhere in between of other clones. I mean, you have some that are a lot less, you have some that are more. So the 825 kind of falls in that in between range for me. Not mad at the price, especially for what you're getting here. And speaking of the price, this is available to order at frontendaudio.com, so you can check out more about this there. So any questions, comments, let me know, and I'll catch y'all next time.